Welcome to Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corombos. Tuesday, December 7th marks 80 years since the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor that triggered America's entry into World War II. During the war, some 16 million Americans served this nation in uniform. And fortunately, there remain some who can tell us exactly what happened that day at Pearl Harbor. One of them is Frank Emond, a veteran of the U.S. Navy, who was on the deck of the USS Pennsylvania as the attack began. He saw firsthand the devastation inflicted by the Japanese bombs, and was then tasked with attending to those killed and wounded on that day of infamy. Frank Emond was born in Rhode Island in 1918 and spent his entire childhood in that area. Long before he joined the service, though, Emond developed a deep love for music, thanks to his mother.
When I was growing up as a youngster, I spent a lot of time alone because I had developed a stammer at that time and didn't have many friends. So my mother decided, who was a violinist, decided that I should play an instrument to get in the band, to have a goal or something to do. So she approached the bandmaster of the junior high school, said she wanted me to play in the band, and the only instrument he had available for me there was a French horn. So they loaned me the French horn and gave me one lesson to how to make noise on it, and so I started being a horn player. So I played French horn during my junior high school and high school years, got to be proficient on that.
Emond grew up through the Roaring '20s and the Great Depression. 3 years after graduating high school, Emond discovered that his musical talent could find a place in our armed forces.
I joined the Navy 1938. I graduated from high school 1935. The Depression was on, but I did find a job in a mill in New England. That's all we had is mills, and so I worked for 3 years, or just about, in a mill. It was getting depressing. We were getting 25 cents an hour, and I gave most of that to my mother for room and board. So I thought I'd be in there forever, and I had a radio broadcast that the Navy was looking to start Navy bands, and they were going to enlist men in the Navy as musicians, so I applied for that.
And unlike most military recruits, Frank Emond had to audition in order to prove he belonged with the best musicians in the Navy.
When they accepted me at New England at the recruiting station, they gave me a big packet of stuff, chicks, tickets and everything. I had to go to Washington, D.C. to the music school to be auditioned before I was accepted. So I had to make my way down there, and I finally got into the music school and auditioned on the French horn, and they accepted me. So that night they enlisted me and sent me to Norfolk for recruit training. My training there consisted of about a month of getting acclimated to the Navy, the Navy clothes and the shots, and the Navy terms, and a little information about the Navy. And after a month, then I went back up to the School of Music. When I got to the school, and it was in the sort of about the beginning of summer 1938, I was assigned to Navy Band number 8, which the Navy was making up unit bands, and Navy bands were for duty aboard ships, so they were small. They were 24 people, mainly built as a large swing band, the standard swing band with that grouping, and then some other instruments added to be able to play different, all different types of music at the time.
Even during peacetime, Emond had duties beyond his musical responsibilities while at sea. Here, he gives us a glimpse of what his job was at sea and it's a description that really helps us appreciate how far technology has come for the military and for all of us over the past 80 years.
When we were steaming at sea, the band was lookouts up on top of the mast. We were the surface lookouts up there. We had no radar on the ship, so the only way you know who was around was the men up on top of the mast. Not the very top, but down a little bit. There's a cage there for us. There'd be 8 at a time. We'd climb up the round pole for the stern mast and spend 4 hours up in that cage. And we had binoculars to look through, and we had a speaker to the bridge in case we needed to contact them for anything. So we were the surface lookouts from the horizon back to the stern. So we stared at that, especially at early dawn. When you're going from dawn to light, you never know who was out there. So it was very important that we keep a close watch on the horizon to see if there are any silhouettes of ships out there.
After initially serving on Navy cruisers, Emond and his bandmates got transferred to the battleship USS Pennsylvania. That's because an admiral who would soon become a household name enjoyed their music and wanted them on board his new ship.
Oh, we didn't get to Pearl Harbor till the summer of 1941. At that time, we were on a light cruiser, and Admiral Kimmel was in charge of the light cruisers, and he was on our ship. He liked our band, and when he was appointed 4-star Admiral Sink-Pack Fleet, he had to go to the battleship Pennsylvania, which was the flagship. So he took us with him. So we arrived in the early summer of 1941.
Husband Kimmel not only became commander of the USS Pennsylvania, but by 1941 would be named commander-in-chief of the entire U.S. Pacific Fleet. Kimmel became a controversial figure in the wake of the attack on Pearl Harbor over his leadership decisions and what he could or should have done differently. Kimmel was relieved of his command shortly after the attack. Subsequent investigations largely cleared Kimmel, and Frank Emond agrees that if history is fair, husband Kimmel will be treated rather well.
I think Admiral Kimmel did as well as anyone could have done. At times, the surface around Hawaii was in charge of the Navy, and the Air Force was in charge of the air around there, and the Army had Schofield Barracks. So there was no warning which he could receive that we were in any problem. What we have learned in the future, which could have been just a rumor or something, that the Navy tried to send him warnings to go into a higher prepared status on Thursday or Friday before the attack, but there was sunspots or something going on, and the Navy couldn't get a radio signal there. So I heard they sent it by Western Union, but in those days Honolulu was such a small town that the Western Union was closed on the weekend. So I don't think we had very much warning for an imminent attack.
Which brings us to the morning of Sunday, December 7th, 1941. Frank Emond was awake, although a bit bleary-eyed, after a long but fun Saturday night. Here he sets the stage for us just before the Japanese attack began.
Well, the band had worked till 11 o'clock that night. We had played a dance contest-like thing with the band from the California, I think, and it was a big hall we had there along a 1010 dock, and we went from one end of the hall, and Arizona was the other. Each each band played three numbers, and then whoever had most applause at the end won, and that the trophy that they had. So we got back to the ship about 11, and then it was the battleships. We had 9. They're groups of 3, and that morning coming up Sunday was our band's turn to play colors in the morning, and that's at 8 o'clock when we raised the flag. So I was the leading petty officer of the band, so we had to get them up and get them on the deck early that morning. And so at 10 minutes of 8, we were lined up in our place, and the Marine Guard was in their place alongside, and we were just standing there waiting to play colors.
When we come back, Frank Emond walks us through the horrific events of the Japanese attacks on Pearl Harbor. I'm Greg Corombos, and this is Veterans Chronicles. This is Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corombos. Our guest this week is Frank Emond, a U.S. Navy veteran of World War II, and we now pick up with his memories of the Japanese commencing their attack on Pearl Harbor.
For bugle, they play first call at 5 minutes to 8, so everybody hears that and knows that it's almost time for colors. Well, the bugle was sounding just about 5 to 8. I looked up and heard a noise and saw a line of planes coming in from the right, from our right anyway, or there were planes in line. The first one curled over a little bit and dropped something, and I thought they lost part of their tail or something. So I watched the object, and when it hit ground, it was in Fort Island Naval Air Station, and it exploded, made a loud noise, and smoke and fire, and startled everybody. We were just trying to get our eyes off that when right by the stern of a ship. Our ship was in dry dock there. A torpedo plane comes swishing by, and the man in the back cockpit was shooting at us. It was high, and it was going so fast that it didn't hit anybody, but it dropped the torpedo right there. We could see the torpedo hit the water, and we could see some kind of floats come off the torpedo. Right there, off to our right, was the cruiser Helena was tied to the dock, and the mine ship Oglala was tied to them. The torpedo went under the Oglala, which was a wooden ship designed for mine work, and hit the cruiser and exploded. And which all took about a minute or 2 minutes, and then we looked back up and we could see all the big red spots on the planes, so we knew that they were the Japanese attacking. So we knew that being out on the exposed deck there was the wrong place for us, so it only took us an instant to start to run for the battle station. And at that time, the officer of the deck and people saw what was going on. They sounded general quarters throughout the ship at the same time. So my general quarters station and one of the other members of my band was with the aft repair party, which was 3 decks down from where we were, along the stern of the ship. So we sort of zoomed down through there and got to our battle station. Our battle station was the aft repair party, and being in the band and not having a carpenter trade or something, we were assigned at these different places, and we were stretcher bearers. So I and my friend, the man, was assigned to that aft repair party as a stretcher bearers. So we just sat there, and we had, of course, the ships. You had no chairs or lounges or benches because it would burn, and so if you want to sit down, you sat down on the steel decks, and you could hear, and once in a while you could hear thumps, and going on. You knew that something was going on out there, but there was no way of us to know anything about the different ships or anything going on. But the last I saw, the sky was full of these little planes. Those planes in those days went about 150 knots at top speed, so they were slow planes and everything. But they seemed to be floating in the sky up there, full of a sky full of planes. After about an hour or so, it became quiet, and we didn't know at the time, but they had stopped and returned, and we're going to come back for a second strike. At the beginning of the second strike, when we heard noises again, we received a bomb hit, a 155-pound bomb come down through the middle of the ship. It was an armor-piercing bomb. It went right down, made a small hole through the decks, and it got to the main deck. On those old battleships was about waterline. It was a 6-inch steel deck, and when the bomb hit that deck, it exploded and made a big hole going up. In the dry dock with us were the destroyers Cassin and Downs, and they had received one of the bombs in that string, and they were blown to pieces. Yeah, they were smashed very, very badly. But I understand that they were able to recover the drive shafts and engines of those and use them in newer ships. At about that time, the man in charge of the group there told us to go start getting the bodies up, and so we were busy for the next hour retrieving the dead and the wounded men and take them to the places that they needed to go.
That's U.S. Navy veteran Frank Emond sharing his memories of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor 80 years later. But the gruesome events of the day did not stop there, and we'll hear a bit more about that part of the story next, right here on Veterans Chronicles. This is Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corumbus. Our guest this week is Frank Emond, a U.S. Navy veteran of World War II. Before the break, we heard his dramatic account of being on the deck of the USS Pennsylvania during the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor. As he mentioned earlier, Emond was assigned stretcher duty to carry the dead and wounded. He shared how difficult that work could be and how quickly the Navy got the USS Pennsylvania back in the water.
We had a hard time getting some of the wounded and dead. The ones who were close to the bomb, their flesh was burned, so you couldn't grab them by the arm or leg or anything. Because the flesh would come off in your hands. So we had to devise ways to pick them up and get them into our metal stretcher. We used the shoes a lot and this type of thing. And where we could, we grabbed a blanket off a bed that we were close to and someone's bunk and sort of wrapped them in that. But it was very difficult. You didn't have much time to think of anything except what you were doing at the time. We realized that what had gone on, and we got back to fixing the ship and cleaning it. It was a big mess because of the bomb hits, and we did some cleanup of our own spaces and our living spaces, and got all things ready. About 11 days later, they had repaired us enough that we went to sea. So that took all the. So then your seaboard life is very scheduled. I mean, you would certain hours you did this and that and the other. You did your time up on the mast lookouts, and then you tried to practice your horn a little bit and then play a little music during the eating times, the mess times, and. So you didn't have too much time to do anything else. And we had had some of the crew left our, transferred off our ship to help other ships, and so they called for volunteers for different jobs, and I worked as a mail clerk in our post office. We had a small room on the ship, which was a post office, and there was two of us in the post office, and we kept open as much as we could in the evening. In those days, the crew was paid in cash, and they paid twice a month, and everybody liked to come to the post office and get a money order and send it home. It was a continuing job type of thing.
After getting back on the water, it was time to refurbish and upgrade the Pennsylvania.
Well, it took us, we left Pearl Harbor with one destroyer, and then we were the battle fleet, and except for the carriers. It was very fortunate the carriers were not there when they attacked. So it was about a month. We went up by Alaska, and we cruised around trying to find the enemy, and luckily we couldn't find anybody. But a month later, we put into San Francisco to the Hunter's shipyard there. And we spent 7 months on that ship while they repaired it. And at that time, they installed anti-aircraft guns on the ship, which we hadn't had any before. The 20 millimeter and 40 guns, anti-air for close-in planes, not the. We had two act guns which shot way up in the air, but planes coming at you, diving at you, you needed those fast-firing guns. But we didn't. Those old battleships, we didn't have any. So they installed a lot of those, and they took all the asbestos off the pipes, and of course the air we breathed there was pretty bad and everything. The other 23 men that was in my band, they're all gone, and a lot of them had lung problems. But anyway, it took 7 months. It took 7 months to repair us. Then we put to sea, and we started for the west into the ocean, and we got pretty close to the Coral Sea battle, but we were the only major ship standing between the Japanese and the West Coast, and wow. and we did that for midway too. We were close enough for both of them to get a battle started where. But we were not in the battle. Those were air battles mainly. But by that time, other ships had been started to join us. They had built some new ones, and they shipped us some from the other coast or something. So after a while, we were not alone out there.
Next, Emond describes the Pennsylvania's mission in a critical part of the Pacific theater that is often overlooked: Alaska and the Aleutian Islands.
Well, we were still on there when the next battle they had was at two in Kiska, the Aleutian Islands. The Japanese had landed troops there, so they sent what we had left of the fleet up there to get them out of there, and the army, of course, and the transports, and we bombarded the shoreline for them, some up there. That was May 1943. And when that was over, we started back, and we had a little explosion in the aviation gas tank on the ship, and so they put it to Seattle to get repaired some. And at that time, the people running the music bureau had realized that our band, Navy Band No. 8, had been sea duty for 6 years. So they sent us to Pensacola, Florida for a year. So we got off the ship there in Seattle, and they gave our chief leader instructions of how to get to Pensacola, Florida. And but we went by train. But all the trains at that during the first year of the war were going from east to west or west to east, and there was no such thing as a train going from like Seattle down across the estates to Florida. So it took us a couple of months. I mean, we'd get attached to a train and go 300 or 400 miles and then have to sit there for a day or two until the next one come by we could get hook on to. But we did end up at Pensacola, Florida. I was there for about a year. Then they broke up our band for sent us different places, and I was sent to the Mediterranean with the Sixth Fleet Band there.
Emond was one of those rare sailors who served in both the Pacific and European theaters of World War II. Thankfully for him, the patrols of the Mediterranean Sea were considerably safer than what he experienced at Pearl Harbor and at other spots in the Pacific.
When we first went there, they didn't have a ship for the Sixth Fleet. The warships were all different places. And we landed in Oran, Africa, and stayed there in tents on the desert for about a month. Then Patton had cleared Palermo, Sicily, so we were able to get down there. So we flew in there one night. You had to fly night or else get shot down there. And then we were there Palermo for about 4 or 5 months. And then Naples, they had the army had cleared Italy up so far that Naples was clear, but they dredged the harbor enough to get a ship in, and they sent the Sixth Fleet a light cruiser, so we transferred to that ship, and then the rest of the war we spent making tours around the area. We'd leave Naples and go by Greece and around by Turkey and Egypt and North Africa and out through Gibraltar to Morocco and turn around, come back and go along the southern coast of Spain and France and then get back down to Naples. And we just made that tour 2 or 3 times. Sometime in there, the war in Europe ended.
Frank Emond stayed in the U.S. Navy for 30 years, retiring in 1968 as a Chief Warrant Officer, Grade 4. Most of his remaining time in the service was focused on music, with a couple of very special moments standing out in his memories.
Oh, I had 2 that I like to think of pinnacle. One time for 3 years I was in San Diego at the Navy Training Center there, and I had a 100-piece band there for 3 years. And we performed all up and down the West Coast. We even did several jobs at Disney World, and we were on TV once or twice there, and that was a great job. But when my 3 years there ended, they said I had to go back to work now, so I had to go to our music school. I was the academic training officer, and I was in charge of the classroom work and then individual instructions. And I did that for 3 years. And then it was getting close to my retirement age then, and so I looked around and found out that the job in Pensacola was open, so I told them that I'd go there. So I got transferred to Pensacola, and I did 5 years there until I had to retire. I played with the symphony in Pensacola for a while, but then at that level I had to practice an hour a day anyway. And then I had 2 sons. I'm trying to get through college. I had to work, and so I found that I just didn't have time for that. So I had to give up playing. So the only other musical thing I did was I sang with our church choir, and I still do. So that's about all the music I did. But Pensacola had a real fine civic band there. And so they allowed me every time they had a concert to conduct one number for them, and they finally the people that liked the way I did everything, and they were interested. So I'm in the Guinness Book of World Records as the oldest musical conductor.
Of course, Emond's service during the Pearl Harbor attack is indelibly seared into his mind. He continues sharing his story so that younger generations will understand that horrific event's most important lessons.
Well, if you look at history, you'll find out that every once in a while, something bad happens to the United States. You can thumb through a whole bunch of them. The attack on the Twin Towers, and then the Pearl Harbor, the wars we had, the Vietnam War and then Korean War and World War II, and it seems like every once in a while we have a big problem, but we always have had survived. But we did survive by joining together, everyone as a huge family, and working together to correct the bad things and improve our lives. So we have always come out at the end as a better place to live.
Just as a side note, Frank Emond mentioned a moment ago that he set a Guinness World Record for being the oldest conductor for leading the Pensacola Civic Band. Well, that record has since been broken. By him. In November 2021, Emond broke his own record by conducting the Air Force's Airmen of Note in a rendition of Glenn Miller's In the Mood at the American Veterans Center's annual gala when he was 103 and a half years old. I'm Greg Corumbus. This is Veterans Chronicles.